I held out the tests. He crossed the kitchen in 3 steps and took them from my hand and looked at them and then looked at me and then looked at them again and said, very quietly, Claire. Yeah, I said. These are, yeah. He sat down on the kitchen floor. Not gracefully, and his legs just sort of gave out, and he went down slowly, back against the cabinet, both pregnancy tests still in his hand, staring at the ceiling. I stood over him and watched him process it, watched the emotions move across his face in waves, and I thought that I had never loved anyone as much as I loved this man sitting on my kitchen floor holding 2 positive pregnancy tests and staring at the ceiling like it had just said something remarkable. We're having a baby, he said. Marcus, I said. We're having a baby, he said again, louder, like the repetition was helping it become real. 2, I said. He turned his head to look at me. What? 2 babies, I said. The doctor mentioned at my last appointment, I told you. Sort of, remember she saw 2, he said. 2, I confirmed. What happened next I did not anticipate, even though I probably should have, because Marcus had once fainted getting a flu shot, and had also once fainted watching a documentary about deep-sea creatures for reasons we still hadn't fully unpacked. He was, by his own admission, a man whose nervous system had strong opinions. His eyes went wide. Then his body went sideways, slowly, almost peacefully. Like a tree that had decided it was done standing, he tilted over and lay down on the kitchen floor with his cheek against the tile, eyes closed, both pregnancy tests still loosely in his hand. Marcus, I said. Nothing. Marcus. I crouched down beside him. His chest was rising and falling. His color was fine. He was, medically speaking, completely okay. He had simply left the building for a moment. I sat down cross-legged beside him on the kitchen floor and waited. He came back about 40 seconds later, blinking at the ceiling, then at me with the expression of someone who had just returned from a long trip and wasn't entirely sure what country they were in. Did I? He started. Yes, I said. He processed this. How long? About a minute. He nodded slowly, like this was a reasonable and acceptable development. He pushed himself back up to sitting. He looked at the tests in his hand. He looked at me. 2 babies, he said. Yes. At the same time. That is typically how twins work. He nodded again. He was quiet for a moment. I watched him carefully. He took one very deep breath, the kind he takes before he's about to say something he's thought through. And he said, Claire, I want you to know that I am completely... And then he fainted again. This time it was faster. No slow tilt. Just lights out, back down to the tile, cheek against the floor, the pregnancy test sliding out of his hand and coming to rest near the refrigerator. I stared at him, then at the tests, then back at him. I started laughing. I did not mean to, and I could not stop. It started as a sound I hadn't made in months, bright and sudden and completely out of my control, and within seconds, I was laughing so hard I had to put my hand on the floor to steady myself, sitting beside my unconscious husband on our kitchen floor at 6:50 in the morning, 6 weeks pregnant with twins, laughing until my eyes were streaming. He came back the second time to the sound of me crying laughing, which, he later told me, was briefly terrifying. Why are you? He started, and then he heard himself and said, I fainted again, didn't I? Twice, I managed. He lay there for a moment, digesting this. Then very carefully, like a man who had now established the exact conditions under which his body would stage a protest, he sat up again. He leaned his back against the cabinet. He put his elbows on his knees and his face in his hands. 2 babies, he said, muffled through his hands. 2 babies, I confirmed, wiping my eyes. He looked up. His face was doing something complicated, something that was moving through fear and wonder and joy and terror, all at the same time, like a sky deciding what kind of weather it wants to be. Are you scared? He asked. I'm terrified, I said. Me too, he said. I'm also. He stopped. He picked up one of the pregnancy tests from the floor and held it. 14 months, Claire. I know. We tried for 14 months and now it's... He gestured vaguely at the air between us, at the invisible enormity of the thing we were sitting in the middle of. 2, I said softly. He laughed then, a real one, wide and helpless and so full of feeling that it bounced off the kitchen walls and filled up the whole room. We sat on the floor for a long time after that. The coffee went cold. The morning light moved slowly across the kitchen. We talked about everything and nothing, what we'd need to buy, what we'd need to change, how we'd tell our families, whether his mother would faint also, which seemed statistically possible. We talked about names briefly, then backed off because it felt like too much, like trying to hold something that wasn't ready to be held yet. At some point, Marcus got up and reheated the coffee and brought both mugs to the floor, and we sat there and drank them, backs against the cabinet, shoulders touching. The months that followed were not simple. 2 babies meant 2 of everything, and our apartment, which had seemed perfectly adequate for 2 adults, began to reveal itself as a puzzle we hadn't solved yet. Marcus's income was steady but not extravagant, and mine had taken a hit when I cut back my hours in the second trimester because the exhaustion was something I genuinely had not been prepared for, a total body heaviness that no amount of description could have readied me for. We argued about money in the way you argue when you're actually scared, loudly and about the wrong things, and then made up in the way you make up when you remember you're on the same side. There were doctor appointments, many of them, each one producing a new ultrasound image that Marcus studied with an intensity he usually reserved for sports statistics. He carried one in his wallet, twin A and twin B curled against each other like 2 people sharing an armchair, and took it out and looked at it with the same expression every time, like he was checking to make sure they were still there. He came to every appointment. He read every book, or tried to, before falling asleep on them, which counted. He rearranged the second bedroom with a focus and care that reminded me of watching someone take something seriously for the first time. Really seriously, the way you get serious about things that matter beyond your own life. He built the cribs himself, with 1 video tutorial and considerable profanity, and when he was done, he stood in the doorway of the room and looked at them for a long, quiet moment, and then came and found me on the couch and just sat beside me without saying anything. And I knew what he was feeling because I was feeling it too. We were terrified. We were ready. Those 2 things were true at exactly the same time. The girls arrived on a Thursday morning in March, fast and loud, both of them, as if they'd been waiting impatiently. Nora came first, 7 minutes before her sister. Sophie came second, already frowning, already forming opinions. The doctor placed them on my chest one at a time, and the room went very quiet around me, the kind of quiet that only exists inside very loud things. And I looked at their faces, red and wrinkled and ancient-looking and entirely new, and felt something shift in my chest that I knew would never shift back. Marcus was beside me. I found his hand without looking. He was crying, not quietly. The man who had fainted twice on our kitchen floor at the news of their existence was crying in the way people cry when something exceeds every category they had prepared for it. Big, unguarded, ungraceful tears, and he didn't try to stop them or explain them. Just let them happen, because there was no version of this moment that called for composure. "Hi," he said to them, both of them already, equally, completely. Nora opened her eyes first. She looked directly at him. For a long moment, he and a 6-minute-old person regarded each other with complete seriousness. Then she yawned, and Marcus laughed, a sound that came from somewhere so deep it barely sounded like laughing, and held her hand with 1 finger. And I watched the whole exchange and thought, 14 months, and a kitchen floor and a man who fainted twice, and 2 positive tests, and here we are on the other side of all of it. In this room on this Thursday morning, the 4 of us, already a family. Later, when the room was quieter, and the girls were sleeping in the hospital bassinet, side by side exactly, the way their ultrasound had shown them, curled toward each other as if they'd already decided on each other, before they'd decided on anything else. Marcus sat in the chair beside my bed and held my hand, and we both just watched them breathe. "You know what I keep thinking about," he said. "The kitchen floor," I said. "The kitchen floor," he confirmed. We sat there in the soft hospital light, holding hands, watching our daughters breathe. And I thought about all the versions of that Saturday morning that could have existed, the versions where the test said no again, where we sat with our coffee and tried to be okay, where we kept going and hoped. I was grateful for every one of those versions, because they had all been part of the pulling, the slow and patient stretching toward this. 2 babies, at the same time. Both of them here, both of them breathing, both of them already taking up more space in the world than seemed possible for two people who had existed for less than a day. Nora shifted in her sleep. Sophie's tiny fist unclenched and reclenched. Marcus squeezed my hand. Outside the window, the March morning was doing what March mornings do. Not quite winter, not quite spring, caught between what it had been and what it was becoming. Full of light anyway.